Hi there and welcome. My name is Michael Kentenich and I'm a Microsoft Technical Trainer. In this video, you will learn how to unleash the power of lightning-fast data with Azure Cache for Redis. Imagine you are running an e-commerce platform. It's launch day for a new product, and to celebrate, several discounts are offered for many other products, and your website is buzzing with thousands of users trying to grab the best deals. Your databases are under immense pressure, and the website starts to slow down. Users are getting frustrated with a laggy experience, and some are even abandoning their carts. Now, let's imagine this scenario again with Azure Cache for Redis. As users browse through your product catalog, the most frequently accessed data is stored in the cache. When a user requests the same data, it's served from a cache nearby at almost lightning speed, reducing the load on your databases. Even with thousands of users, your website remains snappy, providing a smooth shopping experience. The result? Happy customers, increased sales, and a successful launch day. In this video, I will explain the key scenarios that Azure Cache for Redis covers and its service tiers. I will help you identify the key parameters for creating an Azure Cache for Redis instance and how to interact with it. We'll also see how to connect an application to Azure Cache for Redis by using .NET. Even in the age of cloud computing, caching is an effective technique to improve the performance of your apps. It still takes more time to read data from a disk into memory than to read the data out of memory immediately. Frequently accessed data is copied to several cache locations close to the users to lighten the load on your databases. Azure Cache for Redis is a fully managed open source in-memory data store that supercharges your applications by delivering high performance and low latency data access. It can significantly enhance your application's performance. What kind of key scenarios are you interested in? Would a data cache be useful in your solution? Caches are usually not big enough to store the whole database. A common way to fill the cache with data is to use the cache aside pattern, which only loads the data into the cache when it's needed. When the system changes the data, it can also change the cache and share it with other clients. What about a content cache? Some web pages are created from templates that have static content such as headers, footers, banners. These static elements should not change frequently. An in-memory cache can access static content faster than back-end data stores. What do you prefer, using cookies or using session store? This pattern is often applied with shopping carts and other user history data that a web application might link to user cookies. Having too much in a cookie can slow down performance as the cookie size increases and is sent and verified with every request. A common solution uses the cookie as a key to query the data in a database. Using an in-memory cache like Azure Cache for Redis to connect information with a user is much quicker than interacting with a full relational database. The job and message queuing pattern is useful when an application needs to perform operations that are time-consuming. It can put them in a queue to be processed later. These operations are arranged in order and usually handled by a different server. This way of delaying work is called task queuing. And finally, distributed transactions comes into play when applications need to run a group of commands as one indivisible operation against a backend data store. Either all commands must succeed or none of them must affect the initial state. Azure Cache for Redis allows running a set of commands as one transaction. Azure Cache for Redis comes in 5 different service tiers. They range from the basic tier, which is ideal for small-scale apps or development environments because it's cost-effective with basic caching capabilities and comes with a single node setup, to the enterprise tier, tailored for enterprises with complex needs, powered by Redis enterprise software and fully managed by Azure. For details about memory size, availability, cluster support, and more, check out the Azure Cache for Redis pricing information on the Azure Pricing website. When you create an Azure Cache for Redis instance, you need to provide several parameters. Let's have a look how that goes. In this video, I will show you how to create and configure an Azure Cache for Redis instance. I have already one that I will use later, but I will show you what you need to decide upon when you create a new instance. So as usual, we select subscription and resource group. Then we provide a globally unique name because this is going to be added with this Redis cache windows.net domain, and that needs to be a globally unique name. Then you can tell also that the portal helps you here with finding the correct DNS name. So if you use anything that is not allowed, it will tell you here right away. Also, there's a certain limitation of how long the name can be. Then I decide which region I want the cache to become, and then it's important to pick the correct SKU. So we already said that there are 5 different SKUs available. I would definitely also recommend to look up the pricing information, which you can find. There's a link right in here. But also I have that already open here on the pricing site. You find all the details, so you can compare them together. You see what are the differences in features and pricing. What memory size do you get? Do you get availability up to 5 nines, or is 3 nines enough for you? Do you need private link support, and so on and so on? So make yourself familiar with these different options, and just be advised then. Basic, as usual in Azure, does not come with a service level agreement. So Microsoft recommends you always use standard tier or higher for production systems. The basic tier is just a single node system with no data replication, no SLA. So I would not want to use this in production. So I will go with standard right now. And when I pick one cache stock keeping unit, I decide how much cache I want. So what's the size of the cache? It can go up to 53 with the standard cache. Let's say I choose the smallest version. So with standard, there are a lot of options that are not available. When you switch to premium, you will see that we have a lot more options. I will just show you what it looks like when we go through standard. Public endpoint can be changed to private endpoint. There's no virtual network injection available with standard. You need premium for this. And there are also not really a lot of advanced options. So that's the reason why. Let's go back and I will show you what changes here if you switch to premium. You get more options for the cache size. So you get up to 120 gigabyte of cache. And when we switch over to networking, you see virtual network injection, so that we can select a specific virtual network is integrated. And then it gets interesting when you go to advanced. So in here, we can enable availability support, availability zones support. You can configure the number of replicas you would like to have, and you can configure this as a cluster already right away, so that we get multiple Redis nodes and the workload is divided among them. For data persistent, you have 2 options with Azure Cache for Redis: the Redis database format and the append-only file format. There's some differences in how this is handled and what kind of features it offers, so I will point you to the documentation to compare the two in that sense. And that is all I do have to decide upon. So if I create it, be aware that also the creation before that is actually getting into production might take some time. It will take a couple of minutes. Now, I have already instance deployed, so I can show you what that would look like. And of course, most of these settings that we have that we can do during the creation time, we can change afterwards. So if I would like to change the or scale out, for example, change within. So I cannot change from I cannot change back to basic or standard once I'm at premium. but I can change within Premium to different sizes. And it's a really nice comparison in here where you can tell what kind of features or changes do you get, what's the difference in pricing. So if I want to have more cache, I just click this one and it will be changed. I can configure the cluster size, enable this even afterwards. I don't have to do this at the operation time, and then also data persistence, geo-replication. All these different things that come with Premium can be stored in here. There are also additional advanced settings where you can change the port that is used in here. You can provide a minimum TLS version and a lot more things. Now with the Redis cache, of course, it's interesting how it works and how we get data into it. And in the portal right now, we have something in preview still, but it works pretty well. It's a console embedded. And that console lets you communicate with your Redis cache. Let me zoom in a bit because the size is pretty small. So first of all, you can use some normal Redis client commands, and one of them is ping. If the server, the cache is actually responsive, it returns a pong. Then I can use the set command to store anything in a specific key with its value in the cache. So if I set a key server name and then a value for this, I can retrieve this by using the name. Be careful because this is case sensitive. So if I use the camel case here, I also need to use this all the time. Otherwise, I will get a nil. Then what you can also do is you can use this set command to, I forgot to set it to a number. You can set a value to a specific, you can set a key's value to a specific value, like my counter is now set to 1. And if I use the increment, I can also increase that specific counter by 1. Or I can even use the increment offset. If I want to add all the time 5, I can do this as well. Now, we learned about the caching and the time to live already. So what I also could do is, so let's say I have this counter. And right now I can still retrieve this. It's not going to expire, but what if I want to do this? So I could use the expire command, say, hey, let's expire the counter key. And in 5, what that is 5 seconds. So if I now retrieve that, it will come back up to a point where this is being deleted because it expired 5 seconds after. And then it will just tell me, yeah, it's not there. So the value is there, but there's nothing in it. I can also use something like exists and check if a certain value exists. And yeah, it's there, but it doesn't have any value. Let me just check something here so that I'm not saying something wrong. Yeah. Actually, that doesn't mean, it does not mean, so it does not delete just the value, it deleted the counter completely. That is why this actually means no, it's not there. And I just wanted to make sure that I said that right. And I did not say this right in the first try. So yeah, exists counter is now completely deleted, so I would need to create it again. And that is how easy you can set up a Azure Cache for Redis instance, configure it, and also use the console to interact with it in a very nice and easy way. To connect to an Azure Cache for Redis instance, you will need the host name, port, and an access key for the cache, all of which can be retrieved by using the Azure portal or command line tools. Here's how to do this in a demo. In this video, I will show you how to connect a local application to an Azure Cache for Redis instance. I have an Azure Cache for Redis instance already deployed, running in the premium stock keeping unit already here. And what I need for my local app to connect to this instance are 2 things. One is the host name. So where can we find that instance? And that's the reason why we choose also a globally unique name for this. So I will use Contoso demo Redis cache windows.net. And then there's a very convenient link on the overview page where that shows me the primary and the secondary key. If you use the Stack Exchange Redis library, then this will also allow you to just connect via a connection string, which makes things maybe a bit more clean, but for Python, we need a combination of the hostname and a key. You will also find the same information on the left-hand side in the settings area under authentication. If you open this, it's exactly the kind of information which you just saw, the same information. So now let's use Visual Studio Code. So I have a very easy, because it's very clean and tidy. If you look at this from a Python perspective, all you need for this to work is you need to have a Redis library imported, Redis module. I installed it. I will show you the name of this already, but yeah, you can tell already here the name is Redis. Then I provide the host name and the password. Yes, you know by now that no, we should not do this. It's for demo purposes only. But this is exactly one of the keys that I just showed you. And then we're using this module Redis to get a strict connection to a Redis cache using the host name, the standard port, and the password, and we enable SSL for this. And we use then the R instance here to use this for a ping option, so we can do the same things we did in the console before. We will set a message, so there will be one key set message with a string, basically just as, hey, this is working with Python, and then just print out that that was okay. What's the result there? We will retrieve that message, and then after all, we just return a client list. So what are the actual connected clients to this cache? So this is a super simple example, but yeah, there's nothing really more to it. You can use the same Redis commands that you can also use in the Redis console. And of course, there are, depending on which platform and language you use, different implementations. So first of all, just to check, I did this. I did pip install Redis. That is already installed, so that is a prerequisite. So that my example will work here. And just make sure that this is okay. Yeah, we have it already installed, so all is good. And then I will just run my application here, and it will be very fast because it's lightning fast cache LLA. So yeah, the ping returned to true. The set message was returned, and now it also was reading this from the cache. So as I said, this is something super simple. You also see the IP address of the client, the application that is connected to this at that point in time. Now, one thing I want to check also back here. So in case you don't believe me, so if I switch to the console, if I now say, let's get that message, because that's the key that we use to store that hello, this is running with working with Python, I can now also retrieve this directly on the instance using the local console in the portal. So yeah, that is really just a super simple example how you can set and retrieve values from an application running anywhere by connecting through the host name and the access key. In this video, I explained the key scenarios Azure Cache for Redis covers and the different service tiers it offers. We looked at the key parameters for creating an Azure Cache for Redis instance and interact with the cache. I also showed you how to connect an application to Azure Cache for Redis by using .NET. So congratulations on learning how to configure Azure Cache for Redis and integrate it into your applications using .NET. By harnessing the power of caching, you are ready to boost application performance and reduce latency effectively. Find one of your applications and get ready to turbocharge it with Azure Cache for Redis. Thanks for watching. Keep on learning.